I'm good.
I can't even see.
Yeah.
Go live.
Hey y'all, I'm James Wright and welcome to the shop. Tonight is our monthly Q&A, and if you have any questions, go ahead and throw those in the live chat. If you are watching this recorded, all of the questions are timestamped down in the description below, so you can run down there and see those, or pop through the timeline and see those along there, so you can jump to what questions you want to have answered. Not too much has been going on in the shop this week, other than I've actually been getting to projects. Sarah is starting to work on one of her projects, which is kind of cool. She has a bench. She's doing things in the shop. Melody is working on a project. I'm working on a project with Rob Cosman. I'm working on another project for myself with the picture frames. There's lots of things going on right now. And on top of that, we're in the middle of the chisel test. So if any of you don't know, the chisel test we did about 2 years ago, and I did 18 different chisels and compared them. One of the most in-depth chisel tests I know of with actual data. Very, very cool. However, you never get them all. So I'm expanding the chisel test, and we're now upping it up to 42 different chisels. Yeah, so I'm in the middle of having a lot of fun with that, so hopefully that'll be coming out early December or so, but it's taking up a good amount of my shop time actually getting that chisel test up and going, so lots of fun. On top of that, replacing the brakes and rotors in the car today, and all the other things that go on with life in general. So that's what's been happening in my shop. This is a Q&A, so why don't you throw your questions over there and we'll jump into those. What do we got, babe?
Let's see. Alex wants to know, when are you going to start making Knight of the White Oak gear like a wooden sword and shield?
Yeah, no, I have actually thought about doing a wooden sword sometime and doing something really, really fun with it. Like a laminated Damascus steel type thing. But no, I haven't gone there yet. That'll be a fun one though. I might have to bump that up the list.
Depends if you
Let's
want
see what you make first, Alex.
Want your son to get a hold of it or not.
Yeah. I'm waiting until I can trust my kids, which means they're out of the house. What's next?
Let's see. Kenny-Anjanette Horn asked, will we be discussing Secret Santa tonight?
Yes. If you haven't seen Secret Santa, I do it each year where we make a Wood by Wright Secret Santa. And if you haven't seen it, I have it on both of the Hive Minds, the one in the Hive Mind Facebook group as well as the Discord group. You can go on there and sign up. I should have put the link in the description to it, but I didn't. So there's basically a sheet you fill out with your name, your address, and the things that you're looking for as Secret Santa. And then we match that up in the background between you and someone else. And so someone else is buying a present for you, you're buying a present for someone else. And it stays in your country, so you don't have to ship things outside the country. We're looking for something relatively inexpensive, 20, 25, maybe $30. Something you either buy or make, something to have as a good woodworking gift for someone else. So if you want to be in on that, you can fill out the form. We will be doing the drawing on that on the 22nd, I think I had it listed as. So the end of this week. So if you want to get in on that, hop in on it now. Oh, before I forget, I have to say this. There is an auction going on right now. It's a midweek auction on the Can I Have It Facebook group. So normally the auctions are just on the weekend, but this week is kind of a fun one because we're doing a fundraiser for the Wounded Waters program. And Jeff from Reed Plains and I also put up a plane parts kit that auctioned off this last weekend. But there is a cool auction going on right now with a mystery box. And so it is a box that is going to be full of fun, interesting things. And as the price goes up, more and more things go into the box and adding to the value of the box itself. And I saw it and I thought, I'm going to add to that. So not only are you going to get the value of the box, you're also going to get something from my shop. Either I'm going to, well, it depends on the value. If it's a couple $100, I'm going to throw in a few things from the shop. If it gets up a decent amount higher, I may end up actually making a tool specifically for the person who wins this box. Depending upon who gets it and how much it is, it could end up being a full video dedicated to the tool and making for whoever wins it. So if that's something you're interested in, there is a link to that in the description. And we're hoping to raise a serious amount of money for the Wounded Warriors Project, which is very, very cool. So yeah, click the link down below. You'll find out more on that. So what we got, babe?
Okay, hang on.
Now that I've been talking.
What else?
You can throw a word in edgewise on there.
Let's see. The Walnut Woodworker asked, what is the benefit of a socket chisel? I'm planning on forging a whole set of tang chisels with a tang that goes almost the full length of the handle. Would a good tang chisel be weak?
No, a good tang chisel is not weak. I prefer tang chisels myself. They're a little bit lighter. I like the balance structure on them. I actually don't like a long tang on the tang. I want it to go up about 2-3 inches. That's really all it needs. Any longer than that and you start to move weight farther into the handle, and I'd rather keep the weight down in the head itself. I want the balance point to be right at about the junction between the blade and the handle. Let me grab, do I have a socket over here right now? I've got one in the test kit. Let me pull these out. So here are some of the chisels for the test that is going on. Bring this up. Oop, back up. And in this, so these are the ones that I'm retesting now. A whole bunch of EA Bergs, some newer ones, a couple Japanese, and then we got into this. I'm also doing a couple different wood rivers, and one of the wood rivers is a socket. Now, one of the big reasons that a lot of people say they love a socket is that you can actually pull the handle out and switch it with something else. But to be completely honest, I've never wanted to do that, and most of the people I talk to who say it's a benefit, they never actually switch it out. There are a few people out there who do, in which case then a socket is great because you can pop it off and put a new one on. But I don't see that being a huge benefit to it. The big reason why sockets are kind of looked at as the better chisel is because you find them a little bit more, historically, as a blacksmith, a socket is more difficult to make properly than a tang. A tang is very easy to make. And so if someone made a socket chisel, it was a show of, I have the quality for this, it is known to be a good chisel, and there's this undercurrent of socket chisels are better than tang chisels because in order to make a socket chisel, you've got to have that skill. And so it's kind of one of those things where it used to be a very good sign of a socket chisel is a good chisel. Nowadays, it doesn't make much difference in the actual chisel quality. And I've had a few times where handles have come off. It just kind of gets annoying. You got to make sure you pick it up by the steel itself, not by the handle, in case it does come off. Though, you know, if it's fit right and pounded down on there, they can be very good. I just personally don't like them as much. I prefer a tang chisel. But in the end, it just comes down to personal preference. One of them is not better or stronger than the other. They are both prone to breaking about the same amount. There's just not that big a difference. Also, if you have the tang come up farther into the chisel, it's not going to add more strength to it. It's actually going to weaken it because you're having less material up here. So when you're pounding it, it's easier for a crack to propagate because it doesn't have to go as far to get to a void. So actually having a long tang could actually weaken the chisel. That's why most long tangs actually come all the way up through the chisel and have a butt cap, kind of like the Stanley Everlasting chisel. This one looks like a socket because it's got this on here, but it's actually a tang. The same piece of steel that the blade is actually goes up through the middle and is on this steel button on the back. So this is the same piece of steel as this. And this is a collar that it's wrapped around the wood there. And so this is kind of, a lot of people absolutely love the Stanley Everlasting chisels. I don't like them as much as I originally thought I would because they're very heavy on the back end. But they're really nice chisels, and you can whale on those without any problem. But good question. Looking forward to seeing what you make, Walnut. What's next?
Andrew Seymour has a question related to chair joinery. Dominos are common, and I don't know if I could do mortises. What do you think? I don't know if it's supposed to be think of dowels, think of that, or dowels.
Well, here's the thing. Dominoes are, they're slightly weaker than mortise and tenon. Not by much. And in all practicality, they're not. The only thing is that with a domino, you actually have 2 mortise and tenons. And so that's twice the chance that something's going to go wrong. But in practicality, if it's cut well and the joint is nice and tight and the glue is good, you're not going to be a problem with it. A mortise and tenon is just simpler because there's only one half of the joint. You don't have the 2 halves of the domino. The nice thing about dominoes is actual dominoes are crushed down. So when the glue gets in there, they expand a little bit and will add pressure to it. And that is what you need for a good PVA to work, is you need that pressure of the domino expanding. Dowels, unfortunately, don't expand. Now you can crush them, but most of the time you end up turning them into oval rather than just making them smaller. And so they don't have the added benefit of the domino. But the added benefit of compression is nice, but if it's cut really well and it's a very tight joint you have to pound into place, you're probably not going to have any problem with using just a simple dowel. That being said, I would probably use epoxy rather than a PVA because epoxy does not need the compression to work well. Epoxy can just be resting on a surface and still have just as good of a glue bond as it would if it were completely clamped together. PVA needs that pressure to have a good glue bond, whereas epoxy doesn't. So yeah, you can do the same thing with dowels. Again, it's basically the same thing as a domino. It's just not going to be quite as good with a PVA. So if you use an epoxy, you've got basically the same thing as you would with a domino. Just they're a bit squirrely to line up all the holes. But it does work very well. What's next?
Ellie asked, what gouges did you use for the sticking board?
What gouges? Round gouges. The actual numbers on them, I don't know, and I don't have access to my chisels at the moment to go look them up. And the ones I used were not the appropriate curvature to match it, and so I had to make out multiple curvatures to try and make it match. And so it would be easier if you're wanting to buy one for that particular task to go and buy one that matches that radius. But there's 2 different radiuses, so yeah. And you really don't need to make it a radius to fit the rounded surface. You can just make it a dado with a flat bottom, and it would do the exact same thing. It does not add any strength at all to make that perfect matched radius. So there's no reason to do it other than I had a gouge and it was kind of fun to do. So yeah. But yeah, I don't know exactly what the numbers are. The ones I were using were not the appropriate size. They were just smaller than what I needed. And as long as they're smaller, you can make multiple cuts and basically make a faceted circle. What's next?
Duane Roen asked, what is your favorite new tool or tools in the shop?
I don't know if I have any real new tools.
That's what I was thinking.
When was the last time I went to an MWTCA meet? It was the National, wasn't it? No, it was the Garfield. Garfield, I didn't buy anything. I don't think I bought anything at the Garfield that was particularly interesting.
I think you've gotten.
I don't know. They're probably the ones I've been making because redid the shooting board.
Yeah.
I've actually been using that a lot more recently. I got a new branding iron. This one has a really weird rope on it. I don't know what it's for. I'm probably going to hang it on there, but it heats up just as well with a blowtorch. I've been making a lot of strops and maker coins recently, so I had to get a new branding iron to make them faster. Yeah, I don't know if there's anything particular that I have purchased recently. Once you get to a certain point, there are almost no tools that I need for my shop. I have way more tools than I ever need to do any project. The reason I would buy anything more is, this is an interesting tool. Let's show it off and show people what it can do. I could show a compass plane, but do you need one? No, they're just kind of fun to have, and they're a really cool tool that makes a great thumbnail.
Yeah, I was trying to think. I don't know, you're in Menards every day, but not necessarily for tool.
It's usually hardware for a project or a scrap board for this or that.
All right, let's see. Harold Schultz. What other types of wood, other than hickory, would work well for an adze handle?
For an adze, well, yeah. When people start talking about axe handles, adze handles, hatchet handles, they get really, really picky because, hickory is like the wood you're supposed to use, and any other wood then isn't right. In all honesty, most any decent hardwood is okay. I just wouldn't go too hard. Maple is just, there's a lot of vibration in it. So you hit something, you go. I really like oak. A good white oak is great. Red oak is a little bit softer, but not bad. Ash is a great one for it. Elm is a good one. A lot of the soft maples, as long as you're not getting really soft like a box elder, those will do really well. You're just looking for that balance of, you want something hard enough so that it doesn't deform inside the eye of the head, and you want something hard enough that it's not going to deflect on you and flex. But you need something to be flexible enough so that it actually will rebound rather than just being a stiff rod that vibrates in your hand. So there's a lot of those characteristics, and hickory really kind of is the butter zone on that. But there's a whole bunch of other woods that will do very well. It's just each one of them lack a little bit in one direction or another in one of those prerequisites. But I think that most people would not be able to tell the difference. Most people would not be able to tell the difference between an oak handle, an ash handle, or a hickory handle. But a skilled woodsman would probably be able to pick it up and be like, ooh, yeah, that's not hickory. But yeah. White oak is always, it's a great answer for most anything. So yeah, white oak would be a good one.
So we have a super chat.
Walnut.
The Walnut Woodworker wants to know, do you like squirrels?
Yes, squirrels. That's Sarah's favorite comment of when we're talking about something. It's like, oh, look, a squirrel.
It's attention deficit, ooh, shiny. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, Walnut always comments on my videos on the Discord server with a squirrel emoji. And,
but yes, we like squirrels. They're really frequent around.
Actually, squirrel meat is one of my favorite meats. It's really, really good, honestly. It's really, really good. There's not too much to it, but yeah.
And then Steve C. also super chat and said, I miss the blue light.
Oh, yeah, I got to get that working again. My integration for the smart home, there was a problem with it. It's one of those things I just got to sit down and really think through it, and it's probably going to take me 20, 30 minutes of work, but just never quite gotten there. But I need to get that up and working again.
Do you have a joke or not?
No, I don't. Not off the top of my head. There was one I was thinking about, but I can't remember it. Do you have jokes?
So I couldn't figure out why Melody was upset when I washed the car the other day with her. You want to know why?
What?
She kept saying, wouldn't a sponge be easier? Washed with Melody. Used her to wash.
Oh. He who laughs last.
Usually had to have it. That was just kind of on the fly. I'll have to find another one for Steve. So, yeah, I'm gonna give you.
Oh, look, a squirrel. She stopped.
No, I was reading it. Did you know the reopening of the Lego stores was a big event in 2020?
Why?
People were lined up for blocks. Anyways,
yes.
I gotta find some more. Jokes. Okay, let's see. Dennis Meko. I have a Stanley number 20.5 compass plane, which is Japanned black. Does the blade go bevel up or bevel down?
Bevel down. Yeah. Almost every plane, with very few exceptions, go bevel down. The only few exceptions to that is a low angle block plane, a low angle jack plane, or some new plane that's really fancy. Everything else is bevel down. It's one of those things that it used to be that bevel down planes were very, very rare because bevel up has so many other benefits to it. The problem with a bevel up plane is it takes more efficiency to work. It takes more skill to master it, whereas bevel down plane is much easier to master. And there's also the big mindset difference for the power tool woodworker is that bevel up makes more sense. And so that's one of the hard things for some people to get over or to get around. But one is not better than the other. But you're going to find that, I think, okay, of all the planes here that are bevel up, I have one block plane, I have one low angle plane, none of my spoke shaves, none of my planes up here. I guess you could say the router plane. The router plane is bevel up because, well, it has to be, because it doesn't have a sole. It's a soleless plane. I think that's it. Those are the only planes in my entire shop that are bevel up. So, yes, always assume bevel down. That was actually one of the things that really surprised me when I first got into hand tools, is bevel down. It just makes more sense to make it bevel up, doesn't it? But when you really think about it, there's a lot of big benefits to bevel down in most of the things you do. But there are some drawbacks to it as well. So, good question. What's next?
Let's see. Justin Woods, have you ever made something wooden for your vehicle, like a cup holder?
I don't think I've ever made anything for. Do you think of anything I made for one of the cars?
Out of wood? No. A wedge to go behind the tire. So it doesn't roll.
Used a 2x4 today to stop the car from rolling.
But other than that, no, I don't think you've made anything.
Yeah, no, I made an emblem for Octane Monkey, another YouTube channel. That was a fun collab.
Oh
about
man,
2
that
years
was a
ago.
long time ago.
Yeah. But yeah, I don't think I made anything else. Most of the time with cars, they tend to be far more of an organic shape, which is something I'm going to be making a game controller with a collab with my brother's channel, actually. He has a gaming channel called the Log. Backlog. Oh, come on. So it should be a fun one. But this is going to be a really crazy one because I've got a whole circuit board integration, and I've got all these buttons, and there's a crazy amount of placement, and that one's going to take forever to make. But it should be really cool because we're going to be having a lot of fun with it. White oak, lacewood, live oak, Paduke. I'll probably put in some micarta lines in there, so it should be really, really cool. And then a bunch of carving as well.
Well, of course. Because why not?
Because you can. What's next?
Woodworking with Logan wants to know, what are some needed marking tools, especially for layout?
Number one, what I use more than anything else is a 6-inch tri-square and my marking knife, which is right next to where my tri-square was, or I thought it was. Where's my marking? Oh yeah, it was right next to my square. A marking knife and a tri-square. This is what I use almost all the time. Occasionally I'm going to pull out my smaller square. I have a larger one, but I rarely use it. I do not like combination squares. I have had so many problems with them over the years, and I've used really, really expensive, nice sterrets, and I've used really cheap ones, and I've used everything in between. I haven't found a combination square that I like. Very personal preference, but that's just the way I am. Next up is a decent marking gauge. This old Stanley with the wooden screw, I use this one a lot. I love the pin design. Second one, I use the mortising gauge. This one is from Harbor Freight. I use this a lot. I've had some people who really don't like the ones from Harbor Freight, but this one I've gotten is a great marking gauge, and I use it constantly. Works really, really well for me. I have a couple different wheel style, and I have one that I actually made this week, and it has disappeared on me. That'll be an upcoming video where I made a marking gauge, wheel style marking gauge. Oh, here it is. this one. Ta-da! Really simple, really easy, kind of fun. And yeah, that's a good one. I like that. But yeah, a marking gauge, a square, a knife, that'll get you for 99.9% of all the layout you ever need to do. I use a tape measure if I'm ever coming off of plans, or if I ever need to transfer measurements from one place to another, and I can't just take the actual board, set it over there, and mark it. But it's very rare that I pull out a tape measure. So, yeah. But yeah, those are what I use for most of my marking. What's next?
Walnut Woodworker asked, are miter boxes any good? I have a Langone Miter Box Company made by Miller Falls. The giant distant back saw dates it to be from the 1880s, and it is in awesome shape. No rust. The saw still has its polish.
Miter saws are fantastic if, number one, you're beginning and you're having a problem making angles. But most of the time you can fix that with, a few hours of practice. Other than that, miter saws tend to take more time because there's setup on them, and there's just, for a skilled woodworker, a miter saw has very few actual benefits for functional use, with a few caveats. One of them is if you're going to be making a lot of cuts that all need to be at the same angle, and particularly something that's not 90 or 45, it works great for that. Especially if you're doing like octagonal things and you want to make a bunch of them, it can be fantastic for that. I have two miter boxes in here. When I first restored one of them, I thought I'm going to make a really cool project for it. That video has never made it out, and I've never used it since. It's one of those things that sounds really good, but in practice it just takes a lot more time and really doesn't give you that better of a product. So generally, no, they're not a very common thing. I mean, I'm trying to think of anyone that I know of who uses it regularly. And I know there's plenty of people out there who do, because it's a lot of people like them, but I honestly can't think of a proficient woodworker who uses one. I'm sure someone will put one in the chat and be like, oh yeah, then yeah, I remember that, but I can't think of anyone. So yeah. Do you need it? No. What's next?
Before we go there, for the amount of questions I have, we might get to like 5 or 6 new ones in the chat.
So we're just about running out. We'll hit you if you have a super chat.
Well, we're about halfway through the show. It just kind of depends how much you talk about some of these topics. So
try and
we'll
hit a
see.
few fast.
Let's see. Jeanluc Desselle wants to know, Rogers or Favre?
What's that?
Rogers or Favre?
Favre. Rogers, I really liked him right off the bat. He's got an attitude recently that and hasn't backed it up either.
Both missed out on retiring at the right time.
Oh,
in my
yes.
opinion.
Oh.
They should have.
If Favre would have retired 1 year earlier, he would have been an absolute god. I mean, we still retired his number, but
Yeah.
yeah. What's next?
Let's see. I mean, that was a very important one. Alex wants to know, when restoring brace, what is a proper way to attach the wooden handle? Should it be split and glued or some other secret method?
Originally, the brace was slid onto a straight bar, and then the bar was bent. So yeah, getting back on is a pain. My preferred method, if you're going to be replacing it, is drill a hole, saw down through the hole, put both pieces, and glue them back on. It works really well, and if you do it right, nice clean line, you won't be able to see it. But that's my preferred way, is to saw it down and glue it back in. Some people, if you get really good straight grain, will split it. And as long as you make the handle larger than it needs to be and split it, because wherever the chisel goes in to start the split, you're going to have some denting and some crushing there. So as long as that is longer than it needs to be, and you can cut that section off, with a split, you can usually get a really nice clean line with no cracks visible, but not always. So if you're going to do the split method, make sure you're doing it with something that is rough and you haven't spent a lot of time on, and then do more detail on it once you know the split was good. But that's why I usually just saw it, because I know I can get that good every time. What's next?
Dr. Khan wants to know any brand recommendations on getting a new curved sole spoke shave.
You know, when it comes to excuse me, when it comes to spoke shaves, there's really not too much to these, and you can get the Kuntz brand, and you can get the cheap ones on Amazon that really are decent tools. They'll treat you really well, and there's a couple on there, like the remakes of the Stanley 151s. These you will find all over the place, and you can get them on Amazon for almost nothing. I think you can buy them for like 15, 20 bucks a piece, or at least you used to be able to. And they're really simple. They're just a dumb casting with a couple screws in. The mouth, this doesn't have to be perfectly flat, so if you get one that's not perfectly flat, don't worry about it. It's not going to change anything about the function of this. And you can get these that also have a rounded bottom, so you can get a 151 shape, but it has a rounded bottom on it. And those are a great way to start, especially if you don't have a whole lot of money. A rounded bottom style like this works really, really well, and these will treat you very well. My favorite rounded bottom, though, is the Miller Falls. And these have, I've read a bunch of different names of them. They're smaller than the cigar style, and the rounding on here is just, it's fantastic. I've heard a common name for them called the cigarettes, because they're thinner. But this one's kind of fun because I can actually, I gotta get a screw on there. Let me do this one now. Think about it. This one's a little bit tight. So get the screwdriver in the slot, loosen it up, and I can actually take the mouth out on this one. You can tell I don't do this very often. I should loosen up a little more. And it has a rounded face and it has a flat face. So if I put the flat face on there, now I have a flat bottom spoke shave. And I can flip it back around, and I have a rounded bottom spoke shave. These are really, really cool, but they're very expensive. I think now they're like, what, 80 bucks, maybe more, if you can find one that's all there. I've got 3 of them here, and this is the only one that's complete. The other ones I have parts that I'm always looking for, but I love these. They are so comfortable, they're so simple. They're gonna take a little more skill to use. Anytime you're working with a rounded bottom spoke shave, they take skill, because any amount of rotation in the handle, and you're not cutting, or you're cutting too deep. But the nice thing about that is if you get the skill for it, you can get that rotation. You can make a heavy shaving and then rotate it just a little bit, and you're taking a lighter shaving. And it gives you a crazy amount of control. Even doing flat surfaces, that's what I'm usually going to be grabbing. Though the 151 is just, it's so simple and so easy. You can grab it, set it up, and go to town. So any monkey can use one of these, and you don't need a nice one. The cheap off-brands work phenomenally well. Let's see, which one is this? This is a made in England. Huh, interesting. What's next?
I just want to know, did you pay $80 for that?
No, actually, this one, my original one has all the parts. This one was a gift from John when we were in Pennsylvania.
Oh, thank you, John.
Yes. I need to look him up. I haven't talked to him in a while. I've since purchased 2 other bodies and other parts that, well, here, let me show you this one.
In your line of work and in my line of work, purchasing 2 bodies can mean very different things.
So I've got this one. It's missing the main mouth. It's got the iron and chip breaker, but it's in really bad shape, and it's bent. And I paid 25 bucks for this one in this condition. And I actually thought that was kind of a steal for it, because most of the time the bodies are like 30, 40 bucks. But I'd like to get the sole for it, but I'm probably not going to find that. What's next?
Justin Woods wants to know, have you ever made a wooden phone case?
A wooden phone case? No, I have not. It'd be really, really clunky. It would be too big to hold well. So no, I don't have an intention to do that. I'll 3D print one. I've 3D printed several of them. But make one out of wood. If I were to what's the word I'm looking for? Stabilize it with resin. Might make it a little thinner, but it would still be really, really brittle.
So if you talked quietly with a wooden phone case, would you be the wood whisperer? Sorry.
I should get that from Mark.
And then, Justin Wood said a follow-up question. Have you ever made a wooden block plane?
Yes. Well, I've made wooden smoothing planes, and once you get down to that size, a wooden block plane is a small smoothing plane because they're bigger than a standard block plane. But I've made wooden chisel planes, which are very similar. And this is an old video. I should do another one of these. These are kind of cool and fun. But I've done several wooden smoothing planes, and I've never made one that I've called a block plane because it's very rare to have a wooden block plane. It's usually a small smoothing plane. What's next? Since you're taking a drink.
Nothing. Just chuckling at the chat. Let's see. Hansanomics wants to know, what size parting tool do you use when carving Celtic designs? Maybe they mean paring?
I use a V tool. And again, they're all underneath the chairs right now. A V tool is what I use for almost all of my line work. As to size, it depends on how detailed you want it to be. There are two sizes you get with the V tool. Number one, you have the angle at which it's at. So most of mine are at 60 degrees, though I do have one that's wider and one that's narrower. The narrower the chisel is, the easier it is to do small, intricate things. So you can make your lettering a little bit smaller. And so I do have one narrow one that I bring out when I need to do little things. The next one is how big are the sidewalls. So you have the V on there. How tall are the wings on the V? And so you'd have like a 6mm, 60-degree V tool. And so you can size them off of that. I think the one I use the most is 6mm, 60-degree. Yeah. But if you look at some of my old carving videos, you'll see a link to the exact ones I use on there. But that's what I use more than anything else. What's next?
Hang on one second. So from here on out, I pulled a couple more questions. I highly doubt we're going to get to any new questions at this point.
So if you want us to answer something, super chat.
Thank you for all the bless yous. Let's see. Drakonslayor Gaming wants to know, do you know much about Australian wood? It's difficult here to find useful information about different woods and uses.
I don't know a whole lot about Australian woods. I've played with a few of them. Red gum, a couple different eucalyptus. Australian woods tend to be incredibly hard and very stringy. They're very difficult woods to work with hand tools. They can be. Even the hardest of hard iron woods, you can still work it with tools, no problem. But they're very difficult to work with hand tools. They are hard, which means they're going to dull your tools quicker. They're hard, which means you have to put more force into them. They often tend to have a lot more silica content in it, which means they dull your irons a little bit better, a little faster. And then they tend to have grains that are going all over the place, so you get tear out from one place or another. You always, no matter which direction you're going against the grain for some portion of it. So they can be very, very challenging to work with. As to what to make with them, once a wood gets into that quality, there are very few things you can't make with them. They're difficult. They're hard enough that they can be used for just about any furniture. They're going to be difficult to work with to make the furniture, but you once you get past that, you can make anything with it. They'll make a really nice whatever you want to make. So there's very few things that'd be like, oh yeah, I wouldn't use that for. They're really, really good wood for just about anything. But it's going to take a lot of work to get there. So, yeah. Other than that, I don't have a whole lot of experience with any particular ones other than the 4 or 5 different ones I've played with. What's next?
Let's see. I Like Waffles asked, what cool stuff can be made from wood that isn't furniture or a house?
What cool stuff can be made from wood that isn't a furniture or a house?
Mm-hmm.
All kinds of things. Well, first off, tools to make the tools. People usually think about furniture, but most of the things that I make are decoration. Picture frames and little carvings and puzzles for the kids and book stands, bookends, and cutting boards and drawer dividers. All sorts of little odds and ends throughout the house. And most of them end up being like shelves and displays and decoration. Yeah. What were you going to say? You look like you were going to...
Oh, and cute things for your wife.
Yeah, boxes, lots of
whatever.
boxes, handles for all kinds of tools. There's all sorts of things you can turn for decoration. Anything that your hand often comes in contact with, it's nice to make it wood because it just feels good.
Yeah. Our house has slowly been inundated with...
Yeah. You walk into our house, and in the living room, the floor is wood, the cabinets are wood, the trim is wood, the tables are wood, the chairs are wood.
It's a little overwhelming.
The desks are wood. The coffee tables are wood.
Yeah. They're not just wood.
It's all oak and hickory.
Yeah.
The table base is elm.
Anyways, DBaca Maker wants to know, James, have you ever worked with you?
No, I have not. I have not. It would be a fun one to work with. I have wanted to make a bow, and I thought it would be kind of fun to order in some straight yew wood for that. But no, I have not made that. Would be fun though. What's next?
I don't know if I'm saying this right. Shaolink 9 asked, James, have you ever thought of building a canoe?
Yes. A canoe or a small sailing boat, little dinghy, maybe a cedar strip kayak. I think that'd be a lot of fun. The problem with doing that is it requires a decent amount of space and a good bit of time dedicated to that space. So if I were to build a canoe, that could be basically the only thing in my shop, and then I'd have to give away getting it out in the shop. And so I have an agreement with my wife that the garage is for the cars, and the amount of time I would need to dedicate to that would violate that guarantee. And I don't think she would put up with me doing it in the living room. So my
the
options
rule
are
is if
limited.
Sarah has to work outside the house, I have to have a covered garage.
So
we
if-
live where it snows.
Yeah. Although we had talked about building a third car garage to turn into a permanent shop, but it's down the road a little ways.
Yeah, we're not quite there. Let's see. Michael C. wants to know, I know you're a hand tool guy, but if you had the chance to replace your 6-inch joiner and a 12-inch planer with a combo machine, or replace your 14-inch bandsaw for a 17-inch bandsaw, which would you do first?
The planer would be yeah. In my book, thickness planer is the best tool to offset hand tool woodworking. I know a lot of people would say the bandsaw, but for me, ripping things down, I would much rather use a circular saw, just because it's versatile and it doesn't take up much space, and space is very, very important to me. A bandsaw is very versatile in that, but it is one of these beasts that is, the few times where I've wanted a bandsaw have been very limited in comparison to the amount of times that I've wanted to thickness plane things. And so that is where I would go. It's probably the one power tool that I have that gets used. And whenever I'm behind on getting videos out and I just need to save some time, I could spend 4 hours thickness planing all the boards down, or I could run upstairs, pull out my thickness planer, and an hour and a half later be done. So it's kind of one of those things of which one do you want?
We want it all.
Yeah.
Let's see. Yeah, I don't think we're
Yeah, the benefit between a 14-inch and a 17-inch bandsaw is minimal. You'll get a few projects you can do with it, but there's very few that the 17 would do, the 14 wouldn't.
So FlipSpan78 just super chatted. But can I have it for life?
Woo-hoo.
They had asked earlier for you to mention about the box, but I said that you had already.
FlipSpan. Oh yeah. He's the guy who is sponsoring the mystery box. So there's a link to it down in the description below. And for those of you just joining, you can go there, and it's an auction for a mystery box. And he is guaranteed to make sure that the value of the box is commensurate with the auction price that goes off. And if you've seen the things in his shop, it's going to be a very nice box. And on top of that, I am going to also throw in something from my shop. That might just be something from my store, or I may end up making something. So it depends on how valuable the auction goes. If it's really good, I may end up turning a whole video into making a tool, particularly for the person who wins it. So if you win it, and it's a decent enough price, then I will contact you and say, hey, what tool do you want in your shop? I'll make it for you, and we'll have a video on it.
As long as you make it, you're not getting my Bridge City tool plane, you're not getting my squirrel tool plane. If it's a Sarah tool, it stays in the shop. Should I throw in the non-$80 scope shave? Anyways, I'm teasing. All right, you ready for a joke?
What do we got?
Why are the majority of archaeologists women?
Why?
Because they have a natural ability to bring up the past. Oh, stop. I'm not that bad. I just know this group would appreciate it. It's actually supposed to be dig up the past that kind of messed it up. But anyways. Oh, let's see. Jodi Hyde-parker. She wants to know, would you use Meranti wood for carving a spoon?
Yeah, that's actually...
How do you pronounce it?
I don't know.
Oh.
It's what I call Filipino mahogany.
Oh.
Yeah, you could. You can use any wood you want. They all have their pros and cons. The softer they are, the less they're going to last longer. It does tend to be a very soft wood, but for carving something, makes it much easier to do. And if it breaks, then hey, you have the skill to make a new one. It would be a very good wood to practice carving a spoon, because the grain tends to switch on it. And so you're always trying to carve with the grain, and that can be very challenging. But it's also soft enough, and it won't dull your tools quick enough, that it's a very beneficial wood for learning. And so I think it would be a good one for that. Your spoon is going to be a little softer than normal, but not by too much. So yeah, have fun with it. What's next?
Let's see. Ken Carlisle asked, I have a Lee Valley number 4, and for the life of me, I can't get it to stop leaving tracks. I've tried cambering the blade many times. Any idea what might be going wrong?
If you're taking tracks, you're taking too heavy of a cut. That's just yeah. If you're taking a cut, your final finishing cut should be thin enough that even if it leaves a track, your finger can't feel the track. And that's the way I do it. Mine are perfectly flat all the way across. There's no cambering on the corners. There's no full cambering on it. It's just taking such a thin shaving that you can't feel the edge. There. Yeah, he's playing a game. Yeah, that's my method. Is I just keep it flat, and my last couple passes are really, really thin, just a couple thousandth, and you cannot feel that with your finger, and that's all it needs. if you're really having a problem with it, a lot of woodworkers like to round the corners. And so rather than having a sharp edge on that track, you get a rounded edge on the track. But the best way to get rid of it is to cut thinner. Another trick that I've used several times is you move the lateral adjuster so that one side is taking like 0.03 of an inch cut and the other side isn't taking anything, and it peters out from one side to the other. And if you keep planing across the board with the deeper side going first as you go across the board, then you will be removing the plane track as you go, because the other side tapers out to nothing, and so you don't have any track on that side. So you can clean off the track as you go across the board so that one side tapers a little more than the other. But that takes a little bit of skill to play with. So hope that answered your question.
Right, let's see. If you answer a question a minute, we'll get through them all. So I Like Waffles wants to know, why don't you like combo squares?
I don't trust them. I have tried so many, and every time you move them, it is at a slightly different point, and it's just not quite as accurate as I want it to be. I've been let down by them more times than I can count, and I have tried dozens of them and not been happy. I'm very, very picky about my squares. I want to make sure when I run a line around a board that it's going to be exact, and when I come all the way around the board to the other side, it's going to be exactly where it needs to be. And I've run into problems with that on combination squares. They go out of square much easier, and the ability to slide it up and down has very limited value to me. Yeah, I could use it for measuring depth, but that's why I have a depth gauge. I don't have a huge benefit for them. So if I were working with a pencil, then they would be far more valuable, because you can use them as a marking gauge and mark lines and things like that. And for the power tool person, it would probably be enough for me to come back to that, because most of the time with a power tool, it's not about the accuracy of your marking with your tools, it's about the accuracy of your tool that's doing the cutting. With hand tools, it's the accuracy of the mark you're making, because the mark you're making is what you're cutting. So I'm very, very picky about my squares. But in the end, very personal question. I know a lot of hand tool woodworkers who absolutely love them, but I tend to see the combination square more for the power tool world and the tri-square more for the hand tool world. But as with anything, there's a lot of crossover one way or the other. That would make a really good argument video. I should do that one sometime.
Woodworking with Logan wants to know, will a marking gauge with a pencil work?
Yeah. I actually have a marking gauge. My pencil's out of it right now. It's actually one I 3D printed. I don't like marking with pencils because pencils are very inaccurate. There's a thickness to that line, and you don't know if you cut on one side of the line or the middle of the line or the other side of the line. With a knife is an infinitely small edge. You cut the fibers. Everything on one side stays, everything on the other side goes. A knife is infinitely accurate, whereas a pencil is a little less accurate. So I usually only use pencils for layout marks and things of that nature, or for rough marks. But every now and then I want to use one, and so I printed this one off. But it's probably been 6-7 months since I've needed to use a pencil marking gauge. So pencils are really nice because you can see them. You can see it very, very easily, but they're less accurate. So what's next?
Excuse me. Worth the Effort wants to know, what woodworking tool would you wish someone would produce? His wish is for thicker blue tape.
That'd be a really good one. Thicker blue tape. I would definitely buy that. I would buy that. Woodworker's blue tape. Yeah. I'm on board with that. You come out with that product, I'll buy that one. Yeah, I don't know. Let me think about that one. I'll come back to that one.
We only have 6 minutes. Duane Roen wants to know, what's your favorite design for a wooden mallet?
There isn't. I use different mallets for different things. I mean, if we're talking about a simple joiner's mallet, it's this one. It's the traditional English joiner's mallet with a tapered handle, and it just fills down to a slot. So you can take it apart into two separate pieces. It's a single piece block, not laminated, single piece, usually out of the crotch of the wood where the grain's going all over the place. This thing is just, it is exactly what I want in a mallet, and that is, for a joiner's mallet, that's what I want. I love these split face mallets. I got a couple of videos on these, and these are great when I want to really wallop on something. I give a lot of weight on it, but it still has a wooden surface. I use this for setting my my holdfasts. If I really want to put a lot of weight into it, this is the mallet I'm going to grab. My wooden carving mallets. This is the one I do most of my carving with. Got a video on making that one too. There is no best shape for a mallet. They are all, I have dozens of mallets here, and I use most of them. So, yeah. What's next?
Let's see. Troy J wants to know, are you going to buy more Packer stock?
Yeah, they've only issued it, 5 times in the history of the Packers? I bought it, what was it? Oh, 2010?
Yeah, a long time ago.
Something like that, yeah.
But they opened it up yesterday for a couple people.
Oh, that's right, they did. I heard about that. I didn't think about that. Probably won't right now.
Got other things. Let's see. James Crandall, should I get a new floor scraper or use a cabinet scraper if I am scraping hardwood floors?
If I were to do hardwood floors again, I would definitely invest in a good card scraper that I can do standing up. That was a back-breaking process, and yeah, it would be worth it. If I ever refinish mine, I would definitely buy one of those. They're very expensive and hard to find right now. But in my book, worth every penny.
John Doe wants to know, how do you guarantee when buying wood that there are no insect infestations within, such as termites?
You live up north. Yeah. If it's kiln dried, it's good. If it's vacuum dried, it's good. If it has spent a winter drying outside, where it gets down to -10 or below, it's good. Yeah. Other than that, you really don't know 100% for sure. What I normally say is, put it somewhere where you're okay with it being there, and see if any little piles of sawdust come out. Termites usually aren't the problem because termites are colony bugs, and colony bugs, when you take a portion of the colony away, they die. So termites aren't a problem. It is some of the boring beetles. Those can be an issue. So yeah, but if you're living down south, it becomes a little harder. Kiln dried or vacuum dried, or freeze them out, soak them in borax. There's a few other things I can do like that, but it's kind of one of those things you just have to trust your sawyer.
Shiva Sharma wants to know, I'm guessing, would you do castle joints for a table bottom and top?
A table bottom and top. If I were looking for that particular style, maybe. Castle joints really aren't that incredibly strong. They look cool. They look really cool, but they're not. I come from a house with 3 absolutely crazy rambunctious kids, and I wouldn't trust them unless the rest of the base and the other stretchers were really solid. I wouldn't trust them to hold the table, because I know my kids. There's a reason my base is on my dining room table is I could literally park a truck on it and I wouldn't have any fear of it. Yeah, they look cool, and there's especially if you're doing anything Japanese style, they look well for that. But I don't do a lot in that style, so it's not something I normally would choose to use. What's next? Got one more?
I think these are a couple quick ones.
Okay.
Just don't talk so much. Mostly civil engineer. Stanley 12 scraper plane. Why does the blade have to be beveled instead of sharpening it like a card scraper?
Can you? Oh, the cabinet scraper. A cabinet scraper is beveled because it makes it easier to turn a burr on it. The bevel isn't what cuts. It's not like a plane where it cuts. It is, you still turn a bevel, you still turn a burr on it. And so the bevel makes it much easier and quicker to do that. And you actually get a really strong burr with that because you're taking a sharp tip and bending it over as opposed to mushrooming it out and hardening it. And so they last a little bit longer. But it is just because it's easier to work with. Or at least that's the main reason. There's a lot of other things that people throw at it, but that's the big one.
Woodwork Learner wants to know, what would you make from a mahogany worktop?
What would I make from a mahogany worktop?
Just reading the question.
Whatever I wanted. You know, a lot of people really think that particular woods are well suited to particular tasks. And it's very rare that you come across that, other than something like hickory, which is really good for axe handles. But it's also really good for a lot of other things. So it's very rare that I have, ooh, this wood is good for this project. It is far more common that I'll say this project is really good for, is really well made with this wood. But it's rare to throw it the other way. So for me, I have a stock of interesting woods that I like to keep, and every now and then I come up with a project and I'm like, oh yeah, that wood would work well in this project. But I rarely find the wood and then make the project to fit the wood. I almost always have the project, and then I find the wood to make that project. But that's the way I do it.
All right. Zach Truman wants to know, can you post the link to the Can I Have It where the mystery box auction is
Yes,
happening?
link to it, description down below.
You did? I thought you said you didn't.
No, I have that in there.
You do have that in there.
I don't have the link to the Secret Santa.
Ah, okay. That's
But
right.
mystery box, it's down there.
All righty.
Is that what we got?
That's where I'm calling it.
To answer worth the efforts question, I really like the idea of thick blue tape. That's a good one. You buy that, you make that, I'll buy it. But I think one of the other ones, well, okay. I want a good steel. That doesn't exist. No, actually, I would really like to find carbide blades. And I know Veritas used to make them, but a lot of people were complaining because they can't sharpen them with standard whetstones and oil stones, and they take forever to sharpen. But I would personally like that because I use all diamonds, and I think that would be very, very good, is to have carbide sets. Now, I know they chip a little bit more, so I wouldn't want to use them for the chisels, but for the plain blades, I would love to have that back. But that's just me. So, lots of fun. Thank you for coming on. Forget anything? Next week, I don't know what we're going to be doing for that one, but I'm looking forward to it. I have a couple other ideas coming up, but we'll see how that goes. Oh, if you are within range of Rockford and you would like to be here for a one-on-one, I have a form you can. Oh, I don't have a link in that. Why am I even saying that then?
Well, they can message you.
Yeah, send me a message and I'll send you the form. And I'm keeping that form for local people, so if I'm ever doing a local get-together or a hangout, I can send out a message to that specific group. And then also, if I have some particular topic I'd like to do a one-on-one with, I can send it out to the group and say, hey, I'm thinking about doing this, who wants to join in? So if you want to be in that, send me a message and I'll get you the form to fill out. And yeah, I should have put the link in. Oh well. So I think that'll do it for now. And until next time, have a wonderful day.
Bye.